Welcome everyone. I am oh boy, didn't mean to do that. I am in the process of shutting down my Outlook so we don't get all my notifications when the beeps come in. Welcome to those of you who have tuned in. Today is July 7th, 2020, and it is Tuesday. We are here for one of our regular town halls that we've been doing since this whole thing began in March. We've been tried to be consistent with providing this avenue of information for people that are staff and our involved families and the numbers of people that are. I'm looking here at the number of attendees that are here. It has decreased since this whole thing became part of our daily lives back in March, and it concerns me that I've seen this drop in attendees. And I think that the reason I'm concerned is because that I think speaks to a level of comfort, maybe is the word that has been that many people maybe have come to find during this pandemic, because things seem to be reopening here in Massachusetts. Uh, People are anxious to be out and about, and we are starting to see more and more, businesses return. And it's a concern for me because as the level of attention to the crisis diminishes, and the more that people kind of imagine that we're in the clear or that we're on the path to a normal experience, then I worry that some of our vigilance will break down. So part of my job, I feel, is to continue to be a strong and if necessarily aggressive reminder that this pandemic and this virus continues to wreak havoc across the globe, and to not allow us to fall into complacency. We in Massachusetts have been very fortunate to be part of a system where we are using data uh, uh, to track our progress as we begin to reopen. We've been very vigilant about managing our data and and using that in a kind of science-based way to reopen. But as any of you have probably heard in the news, many of our states have not been as lucky. So even as we are now, I would guess, in a position where Governor Baker would be very happy to see the progress that we've experienced, we're doing so in a state where, or in a country where the results are varied. But just to bring us up to speed on where things are, we are now at a level of 8,000. I'm going to have to put my glasses on here. 8,198 deaths in Massachusetts. That's an increase from this time last week of 198 people that passed away since last Tuesday town hall. That's about the number of people that we had at our last annual celebration in that big tent. That's a lot of people, but bigger still is the number of deaths that have been confirmed in the United States. That's an increase of 4,470 people, and that's roughly the number of people that would fit into the Heinz Convention Center if it were set up sort of convention style with the chairs all lined up. If you've ever been in that place, that is huge number of people, huge. And globally, the number of deaths are now at 538,000, almost 539,000. That is an increase of 33,000. That is more than the number of people that would fit in Fenway Park and spilled into Lansdowne Street during a major playoff event. So we are talking about a huge number of human lives that continue to be lost every day, and that is something that we have to keep front and center, because when we are making the decisions that we make about reopening, we do so in concert with the state and with our sister organizations that are in similar sort of situations as we are, and everything that we do is with how do we preserve the health and safety of the people that we support and the staff that are our main asset and our the most important thing that we have, and we have to do this in a way that's going to preserve those two things. We've gotten some great questions from people. We've been featuring some of them in these last few town halls. We're going to do that again. But first, I'm going to ask Greg to bring up Ted Horn. Ted Horn is our Vice President of Quality and Training. I've worked with Ted now for, I don't know, 14 years. Hey, Ted, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing? Thank you.
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm just getting ready to say some embarrassing things, so you can just, just sit there and Ted has been at NuPath probably about as long as anybody has, and he is in a position now where well, I would say this about Ted. I think he's probably the smartest person at NuPath. Academically, Ted, don't get too like full of yourself. um, Ted is he's just somebody who understands the importance of policy and how policy guides our actions as an organization. And there's a lot of talk in the ethers right now about reopening. We've been discussing that for the past few weeks. I kind of remarked that we were forced to close our entire systems in a matter of a day or two, and somehow we managed to do that. But conversations about reopening are not things that are not that easy. Not that they were easy to close, but we're finding so many intricate issues, that have to do with many factors around how do we begin to think about reopening our day programs and do so in a way that manages the around the guidance that we receive from the governor. And I'm going to promise I'm going to give you you're going to take it from here, Ted, in a minute. But Ted and I were talking before this, and I said this is a situation where I think unlike any other time in my life, I've had this sense of how using data, in other words, how are we trending in those six key, those six core indicators that the state has established: number of positive cases, number of surge, beds, hospital beds, surge capacity, all that. How, if we are doing everything the way we're supposed to be doing, then we will be able to control the spread of this. And so you, Ted, have been working with a team behind the scenes, and I don't think people realize just how much conversation has gone into helping us plan for this. So why don't you talk about global, just sort of like what we've done, and then after that we'll have Greg bring up the questions from a mother that I thought were very insightful that would maybe guide us in the course of today's town hall.
Sure. Thank you, Dan, and thank you for the kind words. I would have had my wife and kids watch if if they could find out um, how how smart I am, I guess. The you were talking about taking it seriously, and I want to first stress not only how seriously we're taking this in our planning, but also to lend some confidence and hope is that in our conversations with stakeholders, they are taking it seriously as well. That the questions that we're going to cover today, the questions that have been posed to us, and just the ongoing conversations really steer towards there is a heightened awareness, at least within NuPath's world and in our surrounding stakeholders' worlds. People do want to come back to the programs, and when I say people, it's almost in segments. We've heard stories of, and a question came up last week about with the alternative services that have been offered, are we going to continue to offer those because it's been the right thing for some people? It has been the right thing for some people, and in a way, since we closed, we've really been in this process of reopening with a whole new menu. And more of that is going to come out. I think, Dan, you alluded to that last week, that with reopening doesn't mean some of the opportunities that have been created through this are going to go away. And so, it's, if you could say there's a better outcome and there's a better reality at the end of this, that is the hope, and that's what we've been planning towards. But through the telehealth calls, hearing what people need have all steered into the planning that we've been doing. In terms of what's behind the scenes that people don't see, there is a group working on this, and I certainly wouldn't want to take the credit for their work, but I don't want to name all names because you miss somebody, and that runs risk. So everybody that's working towards this is working diligently, hard, and tirelessly, and it's daily conversations that go into this. The guidance that came out, we did get guidance last Thursday, and to understand the guidance, it was a unique approach that the state took. It's combined guidance from all of the departments under the Executive Office of Health and Human Services umbrella, so that there's consistency across the different departments that are overseen within that part of our government. And there's, as we'll answer some of the questions today, there's nothing we weren't prepared for. You know, there were no curveballs, there were no surprises. And there's nothing that presents that will inhibit us from reopening. Before we answer the questions, I think it's important that why we're reopening and when we're reopening. And you know, answering the why we're reopening is because as much as the alternative menu has benefited some people, there's some people who need the day programs to reopen. And we hear that from the families and the stakeholders for various reasons. And so it's the right thing to do for those people and eventually everyone to get back into some form of normalcy. And when is when it's right. When it's right to open safely for the people who need it. And you know, that's kind of the mantra that we've been working towards. We will have the capacity to reopen before the time is right. You know, and that just, you know, echoes that we're not starting now as the guidance came out Thursday. We're putting the finishing touches on the preparations. So
there's been a strong sort of current of effort that's been happening behind the scenes, even before we were really talking about this, about how we might begin to conceive opening. And you, I understand your desire not to use names, but I think it's important that people know that the representation on this team has included everything from program specific people to our human resources department, and to the administrative functioning of the organization, because we understand that part of our core values is talking about unity and collaboration, and we know that in order for this to be successful, that we need to do this in a way that unites all of the various forces, and that we're all kind of functioning in a similar kind of way, that we understand the importance of reopening. I mean, obviously our very existence depends on it in some ways. There's the whole financial sort of struggles. I think one of the questions of this mother at the end talks about how she can advocate more successfully with her state reps and senators. So there's that concern. But how does the space then, how do we ensure it's safe for people as they come back, that the rhythms and the routines are such that people can manage in a way that is beneficial to these goals. And I think you sort of said it a moment ago, that for some people the virtual solutions may work, but at the very heart of our souls, most of us are we feed from human connection. We're creatures that try to assign ourselves to various tribes. We're through evolution we have found ourselves with affinities towards people that are like-minded, and I think there's something that's so important about sort of the collective, as we try to figure out ways to bring people back together. And Ted, one more thing, I think that the longer this goes on, that I worry about the kind of what the stressors of that does to the human. Like, I'm a pretty extroverted person. It probably surprised you, that Ted. I'm a friendly guy. I like to talk to people, but I even find myself, like, less enthusiastic, let's just say, about necessarily putting myself into spaces where I'm going to be around other people. And I think for a lot of folks, employees that we have, people that we serve, that may be a factor as well, that people may be retreating into this, sort of cocoon, and that may not always be a good thing for folks. So I mean, we're trying to do this on a number of for a number of factors in a number of ways. But you've been leading the charge, and so let's have Greg bring up these questions. They, I think that we've got some of the smartest stakeholders probably in all of Massachusetts or nationally. So thank you, our families and stakeholders. This is from a mother whose son began working just a couple of weeks before we shut down. So that's a whole experience in and of itself. But I thought these were very poignant and important for us right now. She writes, as the long-awaited guidelines, and you mentioned they came out just at the end of last week, that for reopening day programs have finally been issued, have we been able to figure out what they mean for NuPath, which you've told us we're in process. They were just issued, so we're still digesting, but we've gone beyond that. So questions are, first one, is it still that programs will also reopen in stages, as was discussed previously, and that was the 25%, 35% of capacity and so forth, or has that concept been supplanted by program participants' need for 113 square feet of space? And that 113 square feet of space is calculated using a very sort of complex, well, maybe it's not that complex for mathematicians, but a formula that involves, pi and something else, as far as what the physical distancing would be for somebody in those spaces. And this applies to transportation, within the environments. Ted, give us an answer. What's the answer?
So the answer is it has been supplanted by that 113 square feet. And I'll agree with Dan, anything that has pi and squared in it is too complicated to figure out. So what we're using is the 6-foot distancing. And I say that because in the spirit of doing things right and doing it as safe as possible, we get our calculations, we get two different numbers for capacity. That if we just do the 113 square feet, which is nine point something people per 1,000 square feet, we get a very high number. However, we've already done the manual setup of the program spaces, and we've done room capacities, which are very limited compared to what we've known in the past. And our number on the manual setup is going to be much smaller than the 113 square feet. And that really comes into account because what we're taking out in the manual calculation is any hallways, any nooks and crannies that are square feet, but not really usable, that wide corner. And that's what the calculation misses. And so what we discovered is if we had done 113 square feet, we wouldn't be able to achieve the social distancing that is needed. So we're going to be going with the smaller number. Thankfully, at least at this stage, based on the surveying that we've been doing of people's timelines for intent to return, we won't be, and we'll hit on this in a future question, we will have the capacity for anyone who needs the programming. We will have the capacity. We're also going to be accentuating our capacity at the programs by maximizing use of outdoor space. And while our traditional community settings and experiences and exploration is going to be inhibited a bit by figuring out the transportation side of things, we have invested in our campuses, so to speak. And we will be, I believe next week, we'll be having a large tent delivered, which will be up for the next 4 months with outdoor fans and whatnot. And again, in the spirit of safety, we'll have a catch-all where the nursing department, just like they approve whether it's appropriate weather to go out in the community, they will also be indicating the appropriate usage of the space being summertime months. But rest easy, whatever capacity we bring back is going to be the capacity that we can safely support in the building. This just gives us extra space to maximize that social distancing even farther, as well as benefit from the weather. We're in a nice season, and if we can benefit from that, even if community exploration is inhibited, we want to.
And you know what? Why we're so lucky to have you is because not only are you, smart, a guy that understands data and figures and policy, but you got a just this awareness and this this deep understanding of what life is really like. You can have academics prepare a plan. This is how you're going to do it, or these are the number of people that you're going to have in a particular space. But you get the challenges that we encounter when suddenly you've got 30 people or 40 people in a space, and what it's going to do if particular restrictions are outlined, and how that's going to affect from a clinical perspective, just even from the source of the force of, like, how are people likely to use the bathrooms, who's going to go in the door, what stairs are they going to use when they go upstairs, and so forth. And I've been in the building this week, or maybe even the end of last week, I started to see signs up on the bathroom doors, only one person per at a time, instructions on where to go, this week we had somebody at the desk. Now our doors are open, you walk up to the front door, they open, and somebody's there to take your temperature, log you in. This is all for the contact tracing and part of it. So I'm beginning to see sort of manifestations of all that you've talked about and planned. And I think that's just so important to remember, that you're not only creating a plan that fits the bill for what the state's asking for. You have to do these things in order to reopen. You're helping to lead us in a way that what is reality going to look like? And I think that you've really worked to accomplish that as you put forth this guidance, right? I mean, it's something that yeah. So
The reality is, as we
yeah.
just touching on that reality piece, when we think about the need for coming back, some people's need for coming back to the program, we had a family member ask, with the new expectations, can we offer a Zoom class for families and the people who will be coming back on what those new expectations are? And the daily lives of the people we support aren't just coming to a day program. So some of those expectations that we're going to be reinforcing are going to be supporting not just the reopening of NuPath, but the reopening of the social lives, that we're going to be giving the support and development of, appropriately wearing a face covering, social distancing, having a low touch culture. And it's going to be hard for people, but through their reentry to NuPath, it's going to facilitate a reentry into the community as well, which these are going to be those essential skills as well. So.
And before, just real quick, my comment to that is, when I it was yesterday, I think, yeah, yesterday was Monday. So I was in the office, and I walk up, and Elder Soares comes. He's was there, and he was coming up, and he walked with me up to the front door, and he has mask on and everything. We got in, and all of a sudden, I looked at the front desk, and they were there to take my temperature, and I realized I left my mask in the car. I'm like, I'm supposed to be a good example. Look at me, like, not wearing my mask, walking into the building. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, they gave me one to put on. But I just, for as much as we try to follow and there's no bigger proponent of mask wearing for me, because I believe that it will help us collectively to reduce the spread of this. But it's about changing our behavioral. I leave my office. I didn't have my mask on in my office. Hardly anybody in the building. I walked down the hall. I was like, oh shit, I didn't, I don't have my mask on. So we there's a lot of practical, sorts of maneuvering here to help not just the people that we serve, but the staff that are supporting them, to remind them, about these things, so we can have them intellectually in our head, but not, sort of have them inculcated into like everything that we do. But anyway, it's a big test. Let's move on. Let's look at the questions, and then and move on to the next one. If Greg can put it back up. So we talked about the stages. Next one, how do we determine who's eligible to return? It's a great question. Will it be based solely on the risk-benefit questionnaire score, or additional factors such as the client's caregivers, if they can provide transport, length of time in the program, or putting together groupings that make sense? So there's a lot to unpack there. Ted, what can you tell us about this next step, or this question?
So there's some unanswered questions to this, but I'm going to give my best interpretation, right? And we do have a call. We have a call tomorrow afternoon, which hopefully we get more information on the risk benefit questionnaire. However, the way we're looking at the risk benefit questionnaire and our process of doing that with families and guardians and the people that we support are so that we view it as a tool for them to make an informed decision as to when it's right for them to come back to the program. Because the ultimate decision of coming back to the program, it's not NuPath's decision. We're going to create the capacity, and it's really the stakeholders' decision of when it's right for them to come back. So unless I'm proven wrong, and based on what we heard today, we may actually be developing the risk benefit with input from some shared resources. But my interpretation at this point is really a tool for the families and the people we support to assess the risks to them and the benefits to them, not the risks to NuPath and the benefits to NuPath of somebody coming back. Having said that, in terms of determining who will be coming back, I'm going to put in air quotes, those who need it most. They're going to be prioritized. And that's been the latest guidance, that originally it came out that families, those living with families, would be prioritized first. And that makes sense. With the reopening of the economy, there are family members who need to get back to work. And that is an important step in order to facilitate that. There's stressors. Without rotating shifts and respite, there's stressors on the family makeup in these times. And without the paid, organized, and structured support, it's recognized how difficult it can be. So we extended that our initial surveying, and our initial surveying encompasses 4 questions: the intention to return, meaning from the person's prior to the risk benefit assessment, what is their intention to return? And some people have already made a decision that until there's vaccine, I'm gonna make this decision. And there's other people said, I'll be there tomorrow. If the doors are open, we'll be there tomorrow, right? We're still gonna process through, because we do believe that informed decision is gonna come from the process. So we've surveyed those living with families, those living with shared living providers, and those living independently. And the basis of that initial survey is the lack of structured, paid, funded support, daily support in the network, and for above the reasons I mentioned previously. Based on that initial survey and based on the trends and based on our capacity, we are now able to move that surveying on to those people living in group homes. And that's where it brings in to, we are anticipating, based on the intention to returns at this point, that we will be able to be true to those who need it most. And that may encompass people who just, this isn't working for them. They may have the structured group home supports, but 24 hours a day, it's not working for them. Those would be the people that we're going to be responding to as well. So I hate to leave it as yes to all of the things mentioned, but all of them play a part in it. Transportation is a big issue right now. The social distancing guidance on the transportation it's until the Human Services Transportation comes out with how they're going to respond. And it may feel backwards of that's the last piece to come out with their response, when it may be the most important. The vehicle to get somewhere may be the most important part. It is a factor. And what we're finding is that there's the desire to return, but there's no way to get to the program. We're going to figure this out. Case by case basis, we're going to figure this out. It may take some time, because anytime you work on a case by case basis, it's responding to individual situations and challenges. But we're committed to all of that. So the best I can say is we will be speaking with everyone, and we will be determining with the stakeholders who needs to come back first, and that will be the priority. The only other thing that I can add to that is, again, I said that our anticipated capacity indicates that we will not be denying people's return if there's the intention and ability to return. Um, Again, though, we want to do it right. And if we don't have the resources, because there's the other complicating factor of that there's staff who are not in a situation to return at this time, whether it's for family reasons, childcare, or whatnot.
Mhm.
And if that's dependent upon, we don't want someone to return with the anticipated needs, but us not to be able to meet those needs because of the availability of resources. So it's very complicated, but we're working towards all of that. And as the next few weeks progress, um, we anticipate that the train will be back up and running.
Yeah, yeah. Ted, thank you. I was talking to Dan Lannon yesterday, and in a way, I thought what we were talking about is how, in some ways, it's not so much whether or not somebody really wants to get back here. It's more pragmatic in the sense that, can we, will we be able to get the transportation? So do we target people that are closest to us so that, staff could do individual runs if necessary in vehicles? If we have to protect this 113 square feet of space, or the 6 feet distancing, how's that going to work? And families, some families are very eager to have their sons or daughters come back, and they're able to drive them. Other families, that's out of the question. So beginning with a sort of a list of those folks that we think we can begin to get back here, it seems to be like part of the step one. But that's not to say that if you're in a second or third tier of people that for whatever reason you're further away, you're not able to transport your child, or whatever other factors may be affecting it, that we're going to ignore that. I would say that if you're a family member that's out there and you really have an urgent need to get your son or daughter back to work, or back to day program, that you should let somebody know, right? Because
Yeah.
we can't have everybody back on day one, and we're trying to do this in a way that maximizes, in the simplest ways, what we have resources to do right now, right? So we don't want to eliminate anybody from thinking, from participating. But if you're somebody that really feels strongly that you want to get your kid back, we're planning on doing that in a way that keeps them safe. But with it's more complicated than it was pre-pandemic. So they should let somebody know, right? I mean, if they feel strongly about it.
Absolutely.
I would think so.
Absolutely. And the other there's been the question of, if someone isn't able to tolerate face coverings, will that prohibit them from coming back?
Mhm.
No, and I don't say no as in, no, we won't require face masks. We're going to support everyone to follow the guidelines that are safest for people. To the extent I'm looking in my office and I must have 30 different samples of face coverings. And we've supported people as, the first stage was people returning to work. And, we've had people return to work with heavy cotton bandanas,
Mhm.
getting out of work at the end of the day, sweating and saying, I can't tolerate it. And, we've been able to, sample and steer them in a direction where a dry fit face covering has made them perfectly comfortable. So those are some of the little, micro pieces that we're going to work through as well. But with social distancing, we will work with case by case. And for those who can't tolerate face covering for a full day, doesn't mean it's a deal breaker. It means we're going to support them with social distancing, and
Mhm.
then hopefully desensitize or increase the tolerance for
Mhm.
face coverings.
And for people that just are just forget to do it, like me,
Mhm.
there's hope for us.
Yeah.
We can still come back,
Yes.
right? Okay, let's move on.
Absolutely.
Let's move on to the next question. Then, good. I'm glad. I thought maybe I would be prohibited from return to the program. So the third question now is, what specifically should we as clients and families be advocating for? This is a great question, with the state in terms of what NuPath needs for funding in order to make it feasible for the programming to start. I've been participating in the ARC of Mass Don't Count Us Out campaign. Would it be great if my legislators specific ask? Um, so I know you're part of an art group that's focusing on technology. ADDP has been working, in 24 hours, 7 days a week, trying to advocate on for the funding that's necessary. But this last question is a little bit. more, well, to be more complicated than the others that we've had, because nobody knows right now what our situation is going to look like as we move into the, sort of to the third and fourth quarters of this year. Whether that is, determinants that are predicated on the tax collections in Massachusetts. We know that the tax date was delayed to, I think it was July 15th. So we'll know more once that deadline is come and gone. But in reality, we're really trying to create this whole plan without a formal budget, either from the state or even really from what organizations are able to prepare as we move into this next phase, which in some ways is the most important part of the phase. What do you have any thoughts on that, Ted, or do you have any insight into that final question?
Well, I think the first thing, I think last at the Unity Forum last week, you gave some really good advice when you're talking to Mr. Haggerty, that get to know your elected officials and have them get to know you, even if we don't have a specific campaign advocacy item right now. Now's the time to get to know them, and so that when we do need to ask, you know them and we know, and they know you. The ARC, I know we heard last week, the ARC initiative campaign was highly successful with over 25,000 letters sent, and even within the ADDP and advocacy community, there's there to answer that question. There's not a specific, but it's a starting point, and when needed, there will be more. So stay tuned, be aware of who you need to communicate with, and the best thing you could do right now is let them know, expand on the arc of letting your local elected officials know how important the services are to you. For me, Dan, you mentioned the technology task force that I'm on. We're going to be advocating very strongly that we don't lose some of the flexibilities that have been gained during this time. And that's, I started off talking about the opportunities we'd like to continue. That starts with the funding and regulatory agencies. And as needed, then Dan, I'm sure you'll, if there's a campaign needed, I'm sure we'll be initiating that. We heard this morning from our regional DDS that it's anticipated it's going to be a tough year, and that there are, based on tax revenues and whatnot, there's going to be tough decisions that are made, and just building on that ARC letter, that don't forget us and don't make it an easy cut when the time comes. So.
Yeah. And I think our families will be great in helping to remind their legislators that this is not, some fluff service. This is something that really creates the kind of support system necessary for many families to return to work. As we try to reopen the economy, these are things that are sort of inextricably linked. The ability of their son or daughter to go off to work each day or off to their day program allows them then to think about returning as well. So this is something that affects our sort of statewide and national recovery in important ways. And we're, for as much as we emphasize the safety and ensuring protocols so that we don't return to see a spike or a resurgence, we cannot ever discount the importance of the financial, because we need money to pay our staff. We need revenues to support the occupancy costs of our buildings and our various homes and so forth. So these are very real formulas that we have to use as we set our goals for next year. Ted, one more quick question for you before I let you go. It wasn't included with this mother, but it's not a question so much as maybe an observation. I have been sort of intrigued by the level of misleading, or competing messages that I've been seeing around. And John, my husband, showed me this. He says, well, look here, it says only 56 people are dying a year. It says it right here on Facebook. I wish I could have found it because I wanted to put it up on the screen. Because as I looked at it, it was so patently false. This desire that we have to kind of read something, especially on the internet, and if somebody that we respect or know sent it to us, the temptation to just take it as gospel is really it's out there. What would you, just given your sort of academic approach to this, science-based, database, what would you say to people that are, that are looking at these different sort of messages? I mean, is this a real thing, or are we just like making more of it than we need to?
Yeah, I mean, the only reason to look at the more sensational news is to just see how real it is.
Mhm.
That I'm sure we're going to be hearing in very short order from peer providers in Florida and other hotspots just how devastating it is, because we are a part of the community, and so what's happening in the community is going to have an impact on us. No, everything I've participated, I think, in every one of the town halls and unity forums, and you've done a great job of bringing factual, starting each meeting with factual information. In some ways, it feels like, if I were to crawl into your head, it's like it's a strategy to combat the false information, or information that satisfies a narrative, right? Um, Ignoring the narrative and looking at the facts really tells the true story, right? And I think tuning into these is extremely helpful. I know, if people are seeking more information, I know the ARC is also doing weekly webinars as well. And those are trusted organizations that will give the story in context to what we're looking at.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I think in every case, Facebook and social media should be disregarded as a news source. So,
So you heard it here, you guys. If you have any questions whatsoever about whether something's true, call Ted Horn, and I'll leave you.
yeah.
No, we won't have you do that. Ted's a busy guy, but thank you, Ted. I mean, we try to make these fact-based, science-based, as much as we can. I'm not a scientist, and I'm just taking my data from trusted sources, but I just urge people to take what they hear on their normal sort of sources with a grain of salt if they haven't done the diligence of checking, fact checking, and cross checking it among some different trusted sources, because it could be a dangerous thing. Ted, thank you so much for joining us today. You're terrific. I've got so much respect for you. You are doing so much important work, really, I say, grinding it out behind the scenes. Our families and our staff probably have no idea just how much is happening every day. And I, for one, just deeply appreciate the work that you're doing to make sure that as we, approach the date, which we didn't give a date, but we will be communicating that to folks, that we couldn't do it without you and the leadership that you brought to our teams that are ensuring that the plans are in place, that the environments are safe, and that we have the equipment necessary, and that we're beginning to answer other questions that we haven't thought of yet or the families still have. So um, thank you so much. Greg, are there any final questions before I let Ted go and we start to wrap this up?
Nope. All set. Thanks. Thanks, guys.
See, Ted, I'll
Thank
bring
you.
you out every time, and I won't have any questions.
Perfect.
Hey, thanks so much, Ted. You're fantastic. Appreciate your help today. Okay, bye-bye. Okay, so there you have it from our expert Ted Horn, who is leading just an amazing team of people that I see signs of when I'm in the building, knowing that their efforts are starting to produce some noticeable results. To our families out there, I understand the frustration and the anxiety that you probably have. Uh, I'm dealing with it on my own in some ways. It's different, but with my mother who lives in an assisted living facility, seeing how they're handling certain things and the frustration that the families that I have, and not being able to get in there and help her more. Um, I have personally felt that I don't know if it's the 3 month or the 4 month mark or what it is, that I've just felt the kind of a heaviness, sort of on my spirit, as it relates to just the sheer, just the import of what it is that we're doing here. And I just want to reassert to everyone that happens to be watching this that I've not in any way lost sight of the basic and the most important goals that we have as an organization, and that is to keep people safe and healthy and well. And everything that we do from here on out, and everything that we've done up till now, I want people to understand that we're doing it in a way that's balancing the need for return to economy, return to financial stability, a return to normalcy in kind of a business point of view, but most importantly, it's doing it so in a way that keeps people safe, that keeps people healthy, that we do our part as an organization and as citizens of this Commonwealth and of this great country of ours, that we do whatever we can to limit the spread, to get a handle on this thing, and to figure out a way to live in this climate. Guys, we are still a ways away from a vaccine. And so everything we do has got to be done in a way that with insight and with forethought into, okay, anybody can do anything for a day, maybe even a week, but we've got to be in this for the long haul. This has got to be something that can be done day after day, that um, does not submit to weariness or the complacency that our staff have got to have systems to support, so that we don't fall prey to just becoming complacent about things. And I urge all of you, our families, that I've been so proud and so pleased of the way and how intelligent so many of you have submitted questions and so forth, which we've been using here. We're in this together, guys, and we're far from being at the end of this. We are got quite a bit of time ahead of us yet, and we're gonna get our programs reopened and do so in a way that keeps people safe. So that's that today. One final thing. We hope you'll join us on Thursday for our Unity Forum. This week, we're going to be talking with 3 staff that have been selected. 1 staff person that has been with us for just about a year or a little bit over. Another staff person that's been with us for about 5 years, and then another staff person that's been with us for 10+ years. And I just wanted to, I thought it'd be good to get to talk to some staff that maybe we haven't heard from yet, and to get their sense of what it's like to work for NuPath in this age of pandemic, and given their various respective lengths of employment with this organization. So I hope you'll tune in with this for this interesting conversation on Thursday. And guys, hang in there, wear your mask, wash your hands, social distance. It is making a big difference, and we need you to do your part. It's incumbent on all of us to do what we can to command some power over this pandemic. So we got this. We've got this together. We'll get there. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys on Thursday. Bye.